All right, everybody. So this is going to be an official squad cast because now on Black Rosie Media, we have not one, but two WNBA podcasts, but we only have one intro. So we're going to go with the Gotta Get Up one, and then we'll get you ready a preview of New York Liberty at Seattle Storm. That's coming up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us or listening into another episode of not just Gotta Get Up, but our new Seattle Storm podcast. Erica L. Ayala here, but I am not alone. Oberta Rodriguez joining us from the left coast. And from the right coast, aka NYC, the planet of Brooklyn, we have Brian. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited. There's a big game coming up tomorrow, Storm and Liberty on my birthday. So I am very excited about that. Can't complain.
Excellent. Brian, how about you?
I feel like it's been a long time since I've been on here. It feels like the world has shifted in the month and change that I've been out. But it's good to be back.
Hey, it's always good to have you both, and happy early birthday. Okay, I do want to ask you, Roberta, because there's Portuguese from Portugal and then there's Portuguese from Brazil. So what is the proper way in Brazilian Portuguese to say happy birthday?
It is Feliz Aniversário. So Feliz is Feliz. Aniversário is ANIVE. Wait, Aniversário. ANIVERSARIO.
Aniversário. Feliz aniversário. So
thank you. Obrigada.
Yes, of course. Because I think in Portuguese they would say parabéns.
Oh, that's also so. Parabéns is more congratulations.
Oh, okay.
So so our happy birthday song, happy birthday to you. In Portuguese, it goes parabéns pra você nessa data querida. So Feliz Aniversário is very specific. Happy birthday, parabéns can be used in a much broader way.
Okay. See, I know a little bit about Portuguese just because my mother loves Brazilian culture. She was there a study abroad for a while. So we grew up learning a lot about Brazil in particular.
We should go there and have a live podcast during the Women's World Cup, soccer one.
Hey, let's manifest it. We can have our friends Shea Butter FC hang out.
Yeah. Hey, we have lodge already,
Hey, let's go.
To make crib.
Say less. All right, Brian. And you were in Europe. Did you go to multiple countries, or where were y'all?
First week, England. Second week, Italy.
Okay, nice. I knew you were in the neighborhood because I was hanging out in France. So
yeah. It's funny because on the gold medal game, I was we were in a museum and I'm trying to watch the game on my phone, and in between bad service, I'm just texting people what are they doing, and then eventually I caught the final seconds, which was my internet plan worked just well enough to get me to the finish line.
Hey, well, you caught the important, significant seconds. And actually, there is a relation to what we're going to talk about. So I'm sure we will get into that. But per usual, I want to get into our rundown. And this one, we don't have a long rundown, but there's one thing that seems to be making rounds. It's affected Chicago, New York, it looks like. Seattle, and that is whether it's COVID or non-COVID illness. I know that Annie Costabile has always done a great job covering the Chicago sky, and Kennedy Carter was out for a pretty significant game with what appears to be a COVID illness. We've even seen Annie, I should say, has reported that Chicago, some players have been practicing in masks. So, Brian, I'm going to come to you for this one first. I mean, it's an Olympic year, as you alluded to. You were watching that gold medal game. A lot of Olympians from a lot of different countries, including for the New York Liberty and Seattle Storm. And when you hear that there's a flu or COVID bug going around, I mean, how do you think, if at all, that could impact this last stretch of the season?
Yeah, like I feel like we're in the unique combination of everyone traveling all across the world and a longer schedule, so more opportunities to spread things around. So it comes at a especially bad time because we're in the dog days of the season. Everyone's trying to sort of like power through to make it to the playoffs, and if you're not at full strength, you miss out on key games and key moments. So it makes things really challenging for players, teams, and fans. And I guess on a broader level, it is kind of concerning because everything is starting to percolate back up again. And it's like, we thought it was over, but as we're still, even though it don't feel like we still in it, we're still kind of in it, although to a lesser degree. So it's one of those reminders where it's like, okay, just do what you're supposed to do, cover up, boost, take care of your health, and then hope that everyone around you does the same as well.
Yes, indeed. And I think it's going to present interesting, quite honestly, problems and challenges for sports, Hobet, though. We already saw that in France. Again, I was in France and I knew that we had a lot more media, especially around the semifinals when we got to Paris. Then we're in Lille covering women's basketball. I mean, we had some interesting personalities, shall I say, who've crossed women's basketball in maybe not the most positive ways that were in house. But what I also noticed is that there was a lot of overlap between reporters like working at USA Today or the Associated Press, who, even if they were specific to women's basketball, their colleagues were also covering track and fields, were there. And of course, Noah Lyles from the United
Oh
States
my God.
ends
Yep.
up running in a final, wins a medal, wins an Olympic medal, but then, dropped down in exhaustion. So I was masked up for sure. And it's a lot to Brian's point, but Horeta, seeing the impact potentially, and again, it's just getting to be that time of year. I feel like fall is creeping in. So what are your thoughts on, these illnesses, COVID or otherwise, making their rounds?
It's the reminder. I think it's a reminder that it's not that COVID's over. It's not a thing of like being over. It's just more controlled, and it's going to more and more operate kind of like the flu, because we all know what happened when flu first came up, right?
Mhm.
We're lucky that today we have medicine and science on our side. So we're able to move a little more rapidly when it comes to finding um, cure, and making us literally live. So it can impact the rest of the season and the results. We saw Kennedy Carter stayed out last night. Jordan Horston missed the game due to non-COVID illness. But again, um, everything is non-COVID until you get a positive, and we know that it's not always that you get a positive first. Um, so it's just, those players got to take care of themselves. It's a pretty that schedule is not can't be good at anyone's body. That's going to
No.
be tomorrow is going to be the Storm's third game in 5 nights, uh, and especially with so much on the line. I know that we're going to talk about that, but that you get so much of your body, your mind, that is impacted by that, even when you're playing home. So yeah, it's unfortunate that all of that is happening. And I think that just like, I think I read somewhere that Satu Sabali spoke about how the next CBA should focus on player health. And she said that inspired by the NWS LPA that had a very heavy focus on player health and safety. So I think that this is an opportunity for the league to take some notes on how to make sure that the players are safe and protected.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was alluding to. Just, we are coming, honestly, not too many years, not too many seasons from health and safety protocol was very stringent, was documented regularly to kind of, all right, I guess, we'll see what happens. So I guess we'll see if anything changes. But I think another thing I want to talk about in our shoot around is the standings, because we're going to be discussing 2 top 4 teams that are going to collide tomorrow. We'll talk about that. But as the standings are right now, there are 3 teams that have clinched a playoff berth. Now, we don't have their how they finish in the standings and what seed they'll be just yet, but we have the New York Liberty. We're the first team to clinch. Then the Minnesota Lynx and Connecticut Sun. If I'm not mistaken, they either clinched on the same night or on back-to-back nights, but I think it was the same night.
Back. Yeah.
Or it was back-to-back. And then the Seattle Storm on the brink, potentially, of clinching. All of those teams, along with the Indiana Fever, who we might talk about later in the show, are they have a winning record in their last 10 games. The Liberty and Minnesota Lynx are 8-2. The Connecticut Sun 6-4, alongside the Seattle Storm. Even though I feel like their 6-4 feels very different, and we'll talk about that with Hoeta a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, Indiana actually 7-3. So they're playing with the big dogs now, which is really interesting to see. Another thing, and Brian, I'm going to come to you first on this, and we have a new segment where we might play around with this a little bit, but I saw that ESPN, they got a lot of flack, shall I say, from a very specific sect of women's basketball for predicting all WNBA. And one player who we will definitely talk about on today's show is in that ranking, but there was a player that is not all WNBA that a lot of people think should be all WNBA. So, Brian, I'm going to come to you first, and then Hoeta. Is Caitlin Clark an all WNBA player right now?
Oh, all right. Depends on what team. Yeah. For the past month, I've been just like chatting with people about whether she's done enough to make the first team, or is she, or do we just slide her in second? I would say at the very least, I think she's a lock for second team. I think just based on all the factors around her and Indiana looking like a serious outfit for the past 2 months, she gets second team. I'll say that if they somehow finish at 500 or a little bit above, I think she gets the first team. And I think with that, it's a situation where my brain always goes to positions when it comes to the all W team, even though it's positionless. So I would say that the automatics on the first team right now are Asia, Fee, and I think Stewie is pretty much a lock for the first team. So after that, you have Kalia Copper as a contender for me. Sabrina's a first team contender. No one's mentioning her for it, but I seriously would give a vote to JJ if I could on the first team. Alyssa Thomas, so many great players out there that fit the bill. So I feel like she's knocking on the door of the first team. I think a big run down the stretch. I think a huge run down the stretch locks a spot in for her on the first team.
Interesting.
And before I forget, she won't get a first place vote, and she won't. But if she gets like a 4th or 5th place MVP vote, I wouldn't be offended.
I'm glad you added that, because I was actually going to have Hoeta go first on that. But Brian, you snuck it in there because I feel like you knew the vibe. You knew where I was going with that. So you're saying she should not get first place votes, but you think she might snag a few MVP votes. Okay, Hoeta, I'm going to come to you now. thoughts on Caitlin Clark. Is she all WNBA, first team, second team, and none of them, all of them? I mean, you can't be all, but and then you can chime in
Hey.
also about MVP.
I'm gonna say some people are gonna disagree. They're gonna say that Caitlin Clark can be everything. I think that she's a lock for second team, and I think she deserves it. I think that she's having a tremendous rookie season. I mean, that's not a surprise for anyone, right? But not only she's having a tremendous season, she's standing out among veterans, and I think that's what's going to show that's what's going to count when it comes to first team, second team. I think that spot on the first team should be Sabrina's, not Caitlin's. I think that with the team that Sabrina has, the way that she has been standing out and the way that she has been holding the New York Liberty together lends her that spot on the first team. I think that both Sabrina and Stewie. I think that I'm gonna say I think Caitlin Clark, and if it was up to me, Caitlin Clark and Kennedy Carter should be on that second team. I know it's hard. I know that Kennedy Carter might not be there, and I have the team open here. I think that she could lock second team for sure, and I think she would deserve it.
Yeah. And so, Oveta, you kind of addressed this question that Damien has. And Brian, I think you alluded to it more so because the question was directed to Caitlin. But I'll let you take first stab, Brian. Do you think Sabrina should be all WNBA first team?
I would say so. I think that she's been, I know, Erica, we've talked about this for the past year, like when Sabrina is more in charge, like what it looks like. And she's really been more in charge this year than in past years. And first place, top of the league, like wire to wire so far, like she's done it. And she stepped up in big moments. She's had those big games. Even, especially against elite opponents, like the game against Connecticut to close out the first half, was out. She took it over. In the gold medal game, hey, she came in. USA looks like a functioning unit again when Sabrina took it. So we've seen her really sort of like elevate and step her game up throughout the year and play with a consistency and an excellence. It's been a bit of a dip currently, but I feel like that's just the course of a season. Like it happens for everybody. But I think her body of work and the impressiveness and the cohesion of the Liberty, especially when they're integrating a brand new bench and they're still on top of the league and really excelling in a lot of new and unique ways, I think that pushes her into the first team for all WNBA, and it will be incredibly well deserved.
Yeah,
agree.
I agree. And I again, the question, just because the conversation that I saw on social media was about Caitlin Clark, but I mean, I've pretty much been saying it, like you mentioned, Brian, when Sabrina gets the keys, like she's going to be ready to go. I had a lot of questions as to whether she was ready last season. She seems to have answered most of them, not all of them. You know how I feel about non-quick, but the non-quick has gotten quicker. I will say that because once she gets that just a little bit more sharpness on that first step, I mean, her strength and she's deceptively speedy. Like she can move decently well, and she can shake a defender on that second step and beyond very, very well. I do think Adam's Odyssey here has an interesting comment. Not a better point guard PG. I'm assuming this was, if I saw when the timing of this comment came in, I think it was referring to Caitlin Clark. But I do, before I respond with regard to Caitlin, I want to throw out another hypothetical here before we get into our first quarter. But is Sabrina a point guard? Brian,
that's a good question.
That's a great question. Because she's played so much point when Sloot was out all year, but it's like she's a two guard at heart. Like, like you have someone else running things, she can do it. I would say a two. Like, and my brain is so positionless basketball now. I can't really delineate positions anymore, unfortunately. But I would say Can I cheat and say combo guard, or do I have to pick one?
Okay.
Your answer is your answer. You know how we do here. I'm all about, finagling a response.
Yeah, because like when Sloot sits, like she runs the point, like Ivana gets minutes, but usually it's Sab running the show. Yeah, I'll say point guard. Yep. I
Okay.
point guard
All right.
today. It might change tomorrow, but for right now, I'm locked in.
All right,
Yeah.
Brian, final answer locked in. Sabrina is a point guard. Roberta, what do you think?
I think that she can be a really good point guard. And I actually had a good conversation with Pokey Chatman, who is a true point guard and has a lot of success developing point guards. She said that it is a premium position and it's very hard to come across, point like BGs at heart. She said that players who are PGs and develop that on the long run, they are always going to have a job. Now, if you are a Chew who can play really well at one Chew, at also one, then you're like set. You are very needed in the market. You're a great asset for your team. And I feel like that's Sabrina because she does both with, with she does both so well, and that's what makes her special, and that's what lands her that spot on the first team.
Ooh, yes. And you can see that the chat is vehemently saying Sabrina is a 2. And I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Sabrina, in her truest form, is a 2 guard. I feel like I've said that before. And I have also said this before. We need a pure point guard to play with Sabrina Ionescu.
100%.
Because the New York Liberty can tap out at, in my opinion, I guess depending on the point guard, its best version of itself when Sabrina can be the 2. But I also agree that she's not a true one. And so that's why I wanted to bring up Adam Odyssey's comment, because again, I'm pretty sure this was directed to Caitlin Clark. And you know what? Listen. The way Indiana's playing right now, I might be with this. I might be with that Caitlin Clark is the best true point guard in the league right now.
I gotta agree with that.
Because
I gotta agree with that.
Yeah, to your point about what Pokey said, we have to be honest. There is a crisis among us.
Yes.
Women's basketball at a true 1. And I think that goes to what Brian was saying. There has been a shift to a more positionless basketball. You could call me old school. You could call me bullish. You could call me whatever you want. I think that you don't mess. If there's 2 positions that you need to have, it's the 1 and the 5.
Yep. And who has that now in the WNBA that's actually not doing so hot? Chicago.
Interesting.
Chicago has that, but they are all like new playing together. So I think that in the short term, I would say 2-3 seasons, I think we're going to see Chicago, like even next season, we're going to see Chicago jumping to the top of the league.
Yeah. And I think they're about where I expected when it comes to the struggle bus. But I wasn't with people just dismissing them altogether.
Yeah.
But yeah, Adam's saying, again, I'm assuming this is about, or Adam's Odyssey saying, I think this is about Sabrina, who can play both, but she's best at the 2. I completely agree with that. I've said early on, Brian, I don't know if you remember this, but I said early on, Sabrina was messing around for MIP. And I've stuck with it. MIP, I think Sabrina has to be top 3. Like, she's right now my front runner, but I also know that I watch a lot of New York Liberty games, so I want to keep that in the pocket. But I'd say she's probably top 3. And I think we all agree on this point. The turnovers are holding. Well, I mean, turnovers for the New York Liberty have been a problem. We will definitely get into that. But the turnovers for Caitlin Clark were very noticeable. I think the play has gotten better. So facts on that. Chelsea Gray is interesting. Chelsea Gray has the pedigree, obviously, the point guard. But between the injury, which set back the return to the WNBA, and quite honestly, how things went down in the Olympics, and even now on the other side, how Vegas is playing with her. If you're saying who's the best point guard in the league right now, you might have to give that. You might have to give that to Caitlin. You might have to give that to Caitlin. Great before her injury. There you go. Adam's Odyssey. You get me. You get me. With all the Damien saying I'm wrong. What a shocker. No, I love it. Damien, I love it. Sabrina is not the top pick for most improved player. I know you don't agree with me, Damien. I said what I said. So there you go. Odyssey Sims. Now that would have been interesting. Odyssey Sims to New York. Like, I'm not sure that would work. More, I hear you, and I don't know if it would work. I think Odyssey plays a little bit of a different game than what Sandy has the New York Liberty doing right now. What I will say is that the New York Liberty are going to have to find a little more sandpaper. They've started getting it collectively, but I like the idea of having an individual player with some sandpaper. And so that's why I might disagree with myself and say, okay, maybe we do get an Odyssey Sims. But we're going to move on. I do have some of your comments and questions flagged. So I have one from Damien flagged. I have a few others flagged, and we're going to get to those in the fourth quarter because I just want to keep things moving and grooving. But you can please do continue to comment. And if you have specific questions, sometimes we'll be able to answer them as we go. Others I'm going to hold for the fourth quarter. But let's get into it. First quarter, we want to talk about Olympic fatigue. Are we experiencing Olympic fatigue? If you listen to anyone talking about the Las Vegas Aces, there's a lot of conversation about Olympic fatigue, especially because there are 4 players from the USA team alone that are on that in that starting rotation. And then you add, of course, Megan Gustafson. You add Tiff also to that. So they have definitely been impacted by the Olympic break. But we, of course, at Black Rosie Media talk about the New York Liberty and the Seattle Storm. So let's talk about if we're seeing any Olympic fatigue, whether it's from people who went to the Olympics or just the chemistry, the kind of continuity, the rhythm of the team. Brian, we'll start with the New York Liberty. Is Olympic fatigue real or not?
I would say I feel like they're human, so I'll acknowledge that they might be running, especially Sabrina and Brianna are probably running a little bit on fumes compared to where they may have been in June. But I think for the Liberty, they hold themselves to the standard of, okay, no one's gonna make excuses for us, so we're not gonna do it for ourselves. So I would say that I can acknowledge that, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, you guys are here. You guys know how to win. You guys know how to do these things. I still expect excellence from you every night out. So I want to hold them. I'll hold them to that standard while still accounting for the humanity. And hey, because like a lot of them, Sandy too, like they flew from Paris straight to Los Angeles, maybe like with like one day in between in New York City, and then 3 on the road, back home for 3, back on the road for 3 more. So I can acknowledge and accept that they might be running a little bit on fumes, but I think at the same time they have more than enough to keep succeeding and building out the habits they need for a deep playoff run.
And I want to add this little wrinkle in there as well, because what did the New York Liberty come to off of the Olympic break? Not just going on the road, as you said, but they had multiple games on the road. And then they had what was it, Brian? 6-game stretch where they played every other day.
Yep. Yeah. Like the schedule has been so jam-packed. Like when they came back, it was two quick ones on the road. They came back home Tuesday night and then they've been playing every other day for the past 2 weeks. Like they wrap up that stretch tomorrow night, and then they're going to have like essentially a week off, which I think is going to be much needed for this group. But I think that through this stretch, even with a few dips, and the team has acknowledged that there's been a little bit of slippage over the past couple games, which I think is good that they've been accountable for. But I think even with that, they've still been able to do just enough to keep winning and keep maintaining their position, their lead in first place. So I think that even within the dips and mini struggle, you still see good signs for what could come in September.
And I want to ask you this because I think it might instruct some of what we all talk about when we do the game preview in the second or the third quarter. I don't know where I am. Girl, what it's in there. This no second quarter, right? Because pass or play is our third quarter. I was like, wait, where are we? So Brian, you mentioned the stretch every other night, playing a lot of those on the road. They won't wrap that until tomorrow. So one of their more difficult games in the season, or the more two of the more difficult games, certainly in the most recent 10-game stretch, have come in the last two games, including a loss to the LA Sparks. How concerned, Brian, are you from a Liberty perspective, knowing that they won't be on the other side of that long stretch until they play and conclude the game at Climate Pledge Arena against Seattle tomorrow night?
I feel like my default after every loss is a 3. Like I feel like if you catch me any time of the year, oh, the team lost last night. What's your concern? I start at 3, and then depending on circumstances, build my way up. So I'd say that they're at my baseline 3 right now. I think that within the past couple games, we've seen the turnovers really pick up. And Brandon Stewart said something interesting last night in that they're sort of like speeding themselves up and like not getting to the second and third side when they run their offense.
Yep.
In the game against Connecticut, they took like 32 threes and they weren't really getting in the paint that much. And then we wound up asking Sandy and Kayla Thornton, like, okay, how do you guys, Connecticut was clocking the paint, but at the same time, how do you sort of like strike the balance of still getting those paint touches without overly relying too much on 3-pointers? So it feels like it's almost like they're back in the lab trying to re-experiment and figure some things out now that they were at full strength Monday night, but then not at full strength currently, which ties back to the beginning.
Exactly.
So it's a situation where they're almost like relearning everything again. Like the players who stayed had a little mini camp during the break, which they all say was very helpful for them as far as like getting their cues and getting more comfortable. And now that the roster is essentially, I'd say at 95%, like JJ, stop sneezing. Maybe should be good. Should be good to go. So everyone sort of like fully back, we get a better read for what the rotations are going to look like down the stretch. So I think this next week or two is they still want to win and maintain their lead in first place, but they have just enough comfort and room so that way if they take a loss while still learning something, it won't be as bad as if, you know, Minnesota is like half a game behind, and then September, I think 5th or September 8th, one of those days, they're in Barclays Center for a huge game with first place on the line. So they have a little bit of cushion to work with. So even with the past couple losses, there hasn't been the sense of like overwhelming dread and concern among the players and Sandy. There, it's almost like, okay, we know how to do this thing here. We'll talk about it. We'll rest up. We'll figure it out. We'll talk and plan, and then we execute the next time. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. That comment from Jen is pretty interesting. I think she's more trusting of the bench than last year because last year, you know, it was just Kayla. And then when the playoffs came, JoJo couldn't get on the court. Steph couldn't get on the court. So it's like you're running 6 players for 3 rounds, and that's not going to get you anywhere. She's been a lot more trusting of the bench this year. Leo has been amazing. Kennedy Burke has been terrific, especially in recent games. Kayla continues to be excellent and has a 6th player of the year case. Niara, we'll talk about, like, she was excellent last night. She was like, especially in a pinch, like she really came in, had one of the best games of her pro career. So you see that even when people are out, you have someone who's ready to step up and really fill in the gaps and do what they need to do. Just last week, for example, Jalen had the building really turned up against
Ooh, yeah.
Like Ivana.
That's that sandpaper I'm talking about.
Yeah, like I think that when the stakes get higher, Sandy can trust the bench more in a way that I think in her heart of hearts, she didn't last year. And I feel like that's going to be enough to really sort of like nurse them through the end of the regular season. And then when round one starts.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Adam's Odyssey, I saw you asking questions about the expansion draft. What I will say is that and Kathy was asked and answered this multiple times in Phoenix. And her answer was basically, things are coming. So we don't know. We don't know when the expansion draft is. We don't know what the rules are. If I'm not mistaken, the last expansion draft, you could protect 6 players, something like that. But that's only based off of the last expansion, which it's been a minute since the WNBA had expansion. So really couldn't tell you. I think the comment regarding no excuse for the New York Liberty, I honestly don't think they're making excuses. I think they've accepted and admitted what's going wrong. Ionescu should have stepped up. I honestly think Ionescu has done a lot from a leadership perspective, even in the last 2 games where the New York Liberty didn't look their sharpest, including sometimes barking back, at the officials. So I think Sabrina has continued to do what she does, while obviously not just her, but the team experiencing fatigue. And that leads me to you, Roberta, because actually that comment regarding who we effectively are saying is at minimum a hybrid PG. um, Sabrina Ionescu has taken on a very unique leadership role with this New York Liberty team as Courtney Vandersloot has started to work herself back into the rotation. But there is a point guard in Seattle, and that point guard minced no words after a pretty disappointing, devastating loss from the Seattle Storm. Tell us about that loss. It was to Washington. And then what Skylar Diggins-Smith said post-game.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker for the Storm, 74-72 at Climate Pledge Arena. No one expected the Storm to lose for the Mystics.
Not to make
Because
it
the
all about
Mystics.
the Mystics. We know Misha isn't here. But
No.
we had to do our little bit, even though Misha's not here.
I mean, just talking like statistically, right? Because the Storm is 4th, and the Mystics the Mystics was ranking 11th before that game. It was just a very odd night for the Storm. They shot 29.2% from the 3-point line and 37.8 in general. They had 12 turnovers. It was not a pretty game. Neka, who has been very consistent with her field goals, she shot below 30%, and that was the night after Asia Wilson shot less than 30%. And I think that was only Asia's, 8th game in her entire career shooting below 30%. Anyways, but there's definitely something going on. And so yeah, very odd night. It was very frustrating, and Skylar Diggins-Smith made that known. The presser started with Jeff Brown with Storm Chasers, and he made a question, and neither Skylar nor Sami said anything, and Skylar was like, "Listen, in this league, if you're not ready to play, you're going to effing lose." And she expanded on that, and then Jeff Brown asked again, like, so maybe you can think about it now, but how can the team be ready? And she was like, in this league, if you're not ready, you're going to effing lose. She slammed the table. She was not playing, and we know that that's Skylar Diggins-Smith. She says it as it is, and that was a wake-up call for the Seattle Storm. Yeah, the truth shall set you free. That's a wake up call for the Storm, and that's something that I hadn't seen from a Storm player in a while. Perhaps Stewie said something of the likes at some point, but the Storm is known for being like a soft team. It's part of the PNW culture. Also, you have the and like I'm not even kidding. Like everything here is very passive. People just like dance around worlds. And listen, not only I'm Latina, I'm also a New Yorker, I would say. So I think that as a basketball fan, I've missed that straightforwardness from Skylar. And I think that it was much needed. I didn't go to that game. I gave myself the time to rest, but I was covering the game. When Skylar sat on the media table, I was like, she is angry, and she should be. So that was a wake up call. And then Noe came right after, and someone asked, so Skylar said that the team was not ready. What do you have to say for it? And she was like, yeah, the team wasn't teaming. There was no communication. There was not that it wasn't working. And then someone asked, what can you do as a coach to instill that in players? And she said, I'm not on the court with them. That has to come from within, that has to come from them. I can't do anything about that. I can encourage, I can try to inspire that. But if they are not feeling, if they are not ready, if they don't have the hustle right now, I can't do anything. So just yeah, just like very harsh words, which again, even last season when the team was like struggling really bad, we didn't see that.
Yeah,
Uh
they were eerily positive,
yeah,
and maybe, like,
exactly.
As a New Yorker, I was like, I love, like, as a healed, partially healed New Yorker, I was like, oh my gosh, I love that y'all love each other. As like a born and raised, my birth certificate says New York City, New Yorker. I was
Yeah,
like,
that's cute.
"Mhm."
Listen,
I
the
called that. Like,
PNW.
y'all ain't happy that whole time. Ain't no way you're that happy to be losing that many games. Like, come on. Like, come on. Where
Yeah, I
somebody's
mean,
flipping a table somewhere.
yeah, and that's one of the many things that Skylar brings to this team. It needed a shift in culture, and I think that both Skylar and NECA are more straightforward, and they don't
Mhm.
sugarcoat things. When I
Yeah.
say it's cultural from the PNW, I mean it. People here will go around in circles and use all of the cutesy words to try and get you to guess that they are actually mad. And I
Ain't nobody
think
got time
that,
for that.
yeah, exactly. And I think that Skylar being so straightforward was the wake up call that the team needed. You saw that team this last game,
They
that
bounced back.
defensive play at the end, and in the pregame presser. Noe was talking about how the team needed to do better with communication because it seemed like they couldn't just find each other. Those final stops and that defensive stop where like Gabby Williams is sprinted and she jumped. I don't know how high she jumped, but it was high. It was like football players wish they could jump that high for interceptions. And again, it seems like they got it. They're like, okay, we have to be more aggressive because also the WNBA is not passive anymore. There's a cultural thing also that it is expected that female athletes should be a little more polished, should be a little more. The WNBA is not buying that anymore. The WNBA is like, we are professional athletes and we are going to be aggressive every night. There has been so much conversation about that. And I feel like the Storm needed that wake up call. We saw a much better team that had only 7 turnovers. They were finding each other, they were getting the stops. However, they did have a 13-point lead that was blown. They blew that 13-point lead. The drink turned it around, 4 times. That is concerning, especially when you think where the Atlanta Dream is today in the league and where the Seattle Storm is, the team that the Storm has. That being said, Tina Charles triple double. She is. How do you stop Tina Charles?
Yeah, she was ready to come back to Seattle.
Alicia Gray.
Yeah. Yeah. Adam's Odyssey, again, we don't have the particulars for the expansion draft. They have not been released by the league. I believe the last time there was an expansion draft, you could predict 6. That's what we had said earlier. That's all we know. So unless you can ring Kathy on her direct line, we ain't got the answer. Yeah. So yeah, tell us how you really feel, Skylar.
I love her. I think she's amazing.
Listen, I think it's a very interesting because I think you're seeing the fatigue start to set in for the New York Liberty. I think you're seeing a kind of we've heard Jonquil Jones say sometimes you got to thug out wins. To your point, Roberta, I think not only did they kind of have to thug out that win over Atlanta, but they had kind of like a who are we really going to be? Like, hopefully,
exactly.
I think they're hoping that was their breaking point, that was their, players only, close the doors, hash it out, say what you got to say, and then let that thing go, which we also know, Brian, the New York Liberty have done in the past, particularly last season. I don't think they've gotten to that point this year. And I wonder, though, is that more concerning? Is it more concerning that the top team who has not had 2 back-to-back losses since early on, they could potentially be on 3, Brian? Is it more concerning that maybe they haven't had their Skylar Diggins-Smith moment? Or, is it are we, Joveta, a little worried that, okay, you play Atlanta, a team, to your point, that's not necessarily where they want to be, not where I think they have the potential to be in the standings. And that's a team that the Storm, at least statistically speaking, categorically, but based on the standings, should beat. Are we a little worried that they didn't hold on to a lead? I think those are both valid questions and things to discuss. And of course, that's what we're going to do in the second quarter. Let's talk about what is on the line tomorrow. Not only does Joveta get to see another year of life, and we're so grateful that you join us on the eve of your birthday here, but we also get to see what I think is going to be some pretty good basketball.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and we, of course, on the graphic have this Stewie versus Gabby Williams, because the last time they met, Gabby couldn't find her. Yeah. The point. Oh my gosh. I saw like a meme of that very shortly after the Olympic gold medal game, where someone was like, if I send this to you, that means you crossed the line. I was like, dang.
Did you see that Stewie posted that on her Instagram?
Did she? Oh my god.
Yeah, let me find it here. You know how she does like the W
yeah.
dunk? She posted.
Oh
I love Stewie. I
bet she would. And for those who don't know, like, Stewie rarely is like a petty troll. I mean, she can be petty for sure, but more often than not, if she's trolling someone, it's someone that she knows, they're having a good time, it's all cool. Gabby, it was Sid Colson who reposted that and sent it to Gabby Williams, and she was like, yo, Sid, you're lucky. Dang. Hold on, hold it. Dang.
Brianna Stewart.
Oh my gosh, dang. Yeah. So, I mean, that alone is like, I'm here for it, Brian. But we also know, especially, and Roberta, I'm going to have you break this down for us. But this means a lot to the Seattle Storm. Potentially punches their ticket to the playoffs. But what's on the line for the New York Liberty, Brian, as they head to Climate Pledge Arena to take on the Seattle Storm?
I think a couple things. One is you further your grasp on first place. Like every win knocks your magic number down a little bit more, and you get a little bit more breathing room, and then you get into a good little break where you can just sort of like feel good, come back home off a win, and it helps because you see Seattle again next week Thursday. So you get that win tonight, you sort of like come home feeling good, and then you come back to see the same team again, and then you'll be able to sort of like play off that a little bit more too. And I think also for the team, just another, I think an opportunity against another elite team to sort of like iron some things out. Like in their matchups with the top teams in the leagues after the break, they looked excellent against Las Vegas. The Connecticut game was within reach, and with the maybe acquisition, the players mentioned that, oh, we have to play them differently because we can't help off everybody anymore. It was a bit of a adjustment process for them. So I think another chance against a team that they might see in the playoffs if things break out how we think they might, which we'll probably get to a little bit later. So seeing a potential playoff team getting another good win under your belt and really being able to sort of like see who can step up in case JJ is not full strength, how you manage to guard Jewel and NECA, seeing how your guards do against Skylar, and really if you're able to score in the paint with Ezzy roaming down there. There's gonna be a lot of like fascinating subplots within the game. And I think that for a Liberty team that's looking to sort of like that's looking to continue to learn more about itself and figure out what buttons work best against the very best competition. I think a game like this can be a good learning lesson for them.
Damien says, everything, Erica. Everything is on the line for the Liberty, everybody. Listen, we know Damien is very passionate. And I think, Damien, I'm not wholly disagreeing with you. I do think that there is a lot on the line for the New York Liberty. To Brian's point, this is a game that is going to show their mettle, right? How much have they really learned from the busted lips, the butt kick-ins, the they don't love each other comments of last season. Yeah. Like, let's keep it funky, because the last two games, to your point, Brian, yes, Connecticut was within reach. They were clawing back from LA, but they were tired. They looked tired. They looked mentally, to me, it was more of a mental exhaustion, because if you looked at them, they were going through the motions. They were doing what they needed to do. But in my estimation, Brian, they fell into that lethargy that we sometimes see, where they're not hanging their heads, but they're also not hype either. They're kind of going through the motions. That's what it's felt like a little bit in the last handful of games. And they missed that energy, that spark. And that's where I know we had a few comments regarding rotation. With that being the case, for me seeing quite literally thousands of miles away, it was curious that Jalen Sherrod was not used in any of those games for a little pick-me-up, for a little dap, a shot of energy, because I think that is, we've talked about this in the preseason. I mean, when I saw that news, I put it in our Slack channel because I was hella hype that she was brought in for the remainder of the season. We also saw, like, she ain't taking nothing from nobody. Dejanay Carrington, when she got stepped over and pushed the official out of the way, I was weak.
God, that
was so intense and hilarious. Like, I knew she was fired up, but also just the fact that she like slid and used the momentum of pushing herself against the legs of the official to slide towards Dejanay. Like, that was hilarious to me on so many levels. But I think what Damien is saying, I would like bring my boil probably or down to like a little bit more of a simmer. But I think there is a lot on the line. And this is a New York Liberty team that had to push and they were within striking distance to number one, Brian, but late last season. Now we see that they've clinched first. They have a handle on first place, which would give them home court advantage.
Mhm.
And it's a question of if they can keep that. And to your point, Brian, they're going up against a team in the Seattle Storm that's a top 4 team right now. That
Yeah.
being said, Joeta, there have been plenty of times throughout this season, especially early on, where I don't know that the Seattle Storm has necessarily played like a top 4 team.
I 100% agree. And I was actually talking to one of my fellow media members yesterday how my perception is that the team is going through an identity crisis. Um, and because, you bring in, think of last season and who was the central piece of the Storm? Jewel Lloyd.
Mm.
Jewel Lloyd broke the single season scoring record. She was the player of the team. She was leading. She almost broke the regular season average point points per game record. So Jewel was the person whose plays were drawn for, right?
Yeah.
And then you bring in Neko Ogumake, who is shooting better. You bring in Skylar Diggins Smith, who is distributing the ball really well.
Mhm.
And now you have Gabby Williams. So you have a stacked team. The last time that Jewel played with a stacked team, and there was a player who was shooting better than her and scoring more than her, was when Stewie was here. It was
Yeah.
when there was
They also
another
had a
player.
pretty solid point guard, if memory serves. If
Exactly,
memory serves,
exactly.
they might have had like a Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame point guard.
A certain bird or something
If
like
only I
that,
could remember her name. But you know what? You take a stroll out of Climate Pledge Arena, and the street's literally named after her.
Exactly, exactly. And she's there a lot too. She was there yesterday, and it's amazing to see how locked in she is on the game. But anyways, I think that with the pieces that they have, the Storm could be doing a little better, but also the Aces could be doing better. It is it's a parity thing also in this league, and
No.
in Tyler's own words, if you're not ready to play every night, you're going to lose. That's what happens. And I feel like because they are still understanding what their identity is, especially on the defensive end with Gabby
Mm.
Williams,
Mhm.
if Gabby Williams wasn't there, they would have lost that game. If Gabby Williams wasn't ready for that steal, if they didn't have the athleticism of Gabby, that game would have been lost. And that's not to say that the other players can take it. It's just again how the Storm's a team that is still finding its identity in the post Sue Bird era. For 20 years, 20 years. Think how hard it is to break a habit. Um, Ju-
Oh,
uh,
man. Well put. Yeah.
yeah. So Noelle Queen, she played with Sue. She coached Sue. She played with Stewie. She coached Stewie. She knew those players. Now she has a whole different team to coach and to create an identity and a culture. And there are gonna be ups and downs. And I think that as up and down as it could be, the Storms is still ranking fourth in the league, and they're still ranking above the defending champion that has a hell of a team. Like they
True.
may be
That's true.
struggling. I mean the Aces, but come playoff, we know what playoff Aces is. And the Storm is doing what it has to do to maintain its position during the regular season. Beating New York tomorrow would kind of like give them a better shot at maintaining that the fourth spot, and it would be really important because they would get the Chicago Sky. Um, no, sorry, they would have how do you say that? They would have
Home
like
court.
preference.
Yeah,
Home court
advantage.
advantage. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's very important. Climate Pledge Arena is no joke when, the Storm is playing for playoffs. Uh, and they can do it. They have the pieces to do it, but this is a league that parity shows more than ever. When you had the Los Angeles Sparks beating Vegas, you have Atlanta and Washington beating the Storm. It says a lot. And honestly, I
Didn't
think it says,
Indiana just beat Connecticut?
Yep.
and the Storm, I think, right? They beat the Storm too.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Sunday game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wild.
So you see how the Indiana fever is surging, and that's also because they were trying to find that identity. There's a lot, like, this is a league that has top tier talent. All of the players are the best of the best. It's just when you put teams together, when you try to identify what piece you're gonna play, it takes time. And with the Storm, I think there is that slow shift to NECA being the main scorer and being the person whose
Mm,
plays are gonna be drawn to. Uh,
interesting. Yeah.
but Jewel did make a case for herself yesterday.
Agreed.
She had an incredible night shooting. She was 5 for 8 from the 3-point line, including a 3-pointer at the very end that energized that team and gave them the lead to finish
Yeah. Like
ahead.
vintage Jewel.
Exactly. And then NECA, like I said, against Washington, she shot 28 something percent. Yesterday, she shot 53%. And that's kind of where she has been, between 40 and 50. So, and then you have Skylar Diggins-Smith, who called the team out and then comes out the next game with 16 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Like,
Yeah, and I want to stick on that point for a minute because one of the things that Skylar said that before she said what she said is that she made a bad choice.
yeah.
She owned a mistake as a veteran late in the game. She should
Hmm.
not be making those plays. She also, while taking ownership, also said, and it shouldn't come down to just one play.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and so I thought that was interesting too. I really liked what you said about NECA. And I've alluded to this before on CBS Sports. I spoke to NECA during the Phoenix All-Star weekend, and I was going to write a story. I might still, but I'll give you this anecdote because I thought it was hilarious. NECA and I were talking, and I was asking her, what has the transition been like? You've spent your entire career, you've been an All-Star before, but this is the first time you're an All-Star representing a team that is not the Los Angeles Sparks.
Hmm.
And, the game hadn't started yet. And so she's like, I'll have to see if and how it's different. Like, how am I absorbing it differently? But she admitted that not too long before the All-Star weekend, she was in a huddle talking to the team, taking on that leadership, and she's like, okay, she said, Sparks on 3, and she was mortified. She was absolutely mortified. She told me that story, and I could tell she was
That's funny.
still embarrassed. I mean, she was like, I'm going to tell you this, but she was still embarrassed that happened. And she said the team was, they of course made fun of her, but they understood. But that was her way of saying that even though obviously she knows she plays for the Seattle Storm, she signed the contract. But,
It's the breaking habits.
Right. And to your point, that's why I thought it was great to mention it after what you had said about breaking habits, because that's still something that NECA is working out. Now, Skylar Diggins-Smith also new to the Storm, but she's changed teams before. She's had that newness, that's in her rear view. Whereas this whole experience of going through free agency, signing with another team is very new to NECA. So to say that, that it might be her time, right? Or her time is coming to get the keys and to be that first option. I'm curious to see how that pans out. especially as we start to see vintage Jewel Lloyd come back.
Vintage Jewel Lloyd is what the Seattle Storm needs. And Erica, you and I have talked about it in a podcast previously, that Jewel Lloyd was going Eureka status, right? She was shooting and shooting and not knowing
Yeah.
when the ball was going to fall. And that's kind of, and yesterday was a night when the ball was falling. Uh, Again, of those 5 3-pointers, most of them were in the first quarter, because she did have 12 points in the first quarter and then went dead in the second quarter and third, and they came out in the fourth. There are teams that the Storm can afford doing that. There are teams that the Storm cannot afford doing that. And that in a team that they cannot afford doing that is the New York Liberty that they're playing tomorrow. They've been struggling a lot with their third quarter production, and they're gonna be uh, practicing that a lot, because you don't have the privilege of letting a third quarter slide against the Liberty.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I saw Brian and I both, our eyes kind of went up. I wonder if we were thinking the same thing, Brian, because we've seen a version of the New York Liberty where they are terrible in the middle frames. We've also seen a version of the New York Liberty where they're terrible in the beginning and they're terrible in the end, I guess. So which do we think is going to prevail? But I like to do predictions a little bit different at Black Rosie Media. So Brian, we'll start with you. And it's going to be, obviously, you will talk about the New York Liberty. Hobeta, you will talk about the Seattle Storm primarily. But if you have any nuggets for the other team, feel free. But we'll start with this, Brian. Your prompt: the New York Liberty win tomorrow night if?
The New York Liberty win tomorrow night if they keep their turnovers to 15 and below. Against a team like Seattle, if you can make the most out of every single possession, and considering the talent that they have and the talent coming off the bench, I like their chances, and I like them being able to control the flow of the game. We know they're monsters on the glass. I think they're tops in the league in rebounding after the break. So if you're able to keep the turnovers low, prevent them from getting out in transition, keep that Seattle crowd from turning up as much as you can, you can really control the flow of the game and make sure that Brianna gets as many good shot opportunities as possible. They keep it under 15, they win.
I like it. We're going to wrap up the second quarter before we get into a new little segment here in the third quarter. But Hobeta, you have the opportunity now to wrap us up before we go to our halftime. But the Seattle Storm win tomorrow night and give you a birthday gift
if they shoot over 40% and if they dominate on offensive rebounds.
Ooh, I like that. Offensive is in particular. Both of you mentioned rebounds, which I think is very poignant.
Yeah, and if they're able to, and if Brianna Stewart is not on revenge mode, that's also a key factor. If Stewie is in revenge mode, there's no no one can beat Stewie on. Man.
Yeah. If Stewie gets activated, I think she's shown a little fatigue. But yeah, if Stewie gets the blood pumping, that could be interesting. No turnovers. I would love to see both teams be way below 15.
Yeah.
We've seen the Storm bring it down, temper that a little bit. I did have another question that I'm gonna turn over to the fourth quarter, but I want you to think about this, both of you. Hobeta, my additional question that's not in our notes that I was thinking of as you were speaking earlier is, where does Sami Whitcomb fit into this, especially given the role she played in the Olympics? And for you, Brian, we mentioned Niara briefly, and I saw a comment regarding Steph Dolson. What do you like about Niara's game compared to Steph Dolson's game? What do you not like? Compare and contrast. What do we get when we have Niara, and what did the New York Liberty get with a Steph Dolson? And do you agree with, I think it was Jen that or Aloysius, one of them. I'll look up the comment in a minute, but we'll save those two. Just think about them now for the fourth quarter. Specific questions for players who we haven't we had talked about a little bit, but I think could be key, not just for this matchup, but moving forward. Okay, we're trying something new in the third quarter. We're going to do pass or play. And if you are in our Slack channel, then you got to see these earlier today. But pass or play. So how this is going to work, you two, is, and this is going to be kind of more of a rapid round so we can get to some of the comments and questions in the chat. But I'm going to give you a statement. It's going to be a statement. And then you're going to, if you like it, you're going to play. If you are like, absolutely not, you pass. And then if you would like a brief explanation, then you can do that. But we're going to keep it pretty rapid fire. You both get to respond, but I'll start with the person who is our Black Rosie media expert. So our first pass or play, this one, Hobeta, for you first, and then Brian, if you want to chime in. Gabby Williams getting her first start. You like it or you don't?
Oh, play. Absolutely play. Give Gabby Williams what she needs. Give Gabby what she wants. Put her in.
I love it. Brian, what do you think? I mean, objectively.
Gabby is wonderful, and a front court of Gabby, Nneka, and Ezzy is sensational. Play.
Scary.
Absolutely. Okay, next pass or play, we'll go to Brian first, and then Hobeta, you can chime in if you have any thoughts. Leonie Fibich is a first-team all-rookie candidate.
Play. She's there. Like, I think she's locked in right now. Like, she's been awesome. Like, she's won various games for this team. She gives them a level of flexibility that they didn't have last year. Also, she does the Marine thing where she'll just like take those threes in rhythm when the crowd is really turning up, and then they go in and then they get even louder. I feel like Leo has a sort of hidden knack of making threes like that. She's been excellent. Play.
All right. Hobeta, you have thoughts on that one?
Absolutely play. What she's doing for the Liberty in her rookie year, is in a season where you have so many outstanding rookies. Sorry, I'm just saying hi to my wife who just got back from work. In a season where you have so many outstanding rookies, the fact that she is standing out herself says a lot, and she 100% deserves. I know it's too late for rookie of the year, anyone else to be included in the rookie of the year race, but first team for sure.
I love it. Okay, this one is definitely for New York Liberty fans. So Brian, that means we're coming to you first. New York Liberty's season ticket prices as they have been shared on social media. You're going to pass or you're going to play?
Yeah, that's a pass. Like, you can't do that. I'm sorry. Like, I get that there's an upswing. The attendance is like 10,000 plus every single night. I respect that and I appreciate that. You can't jack the prices on people like this. I feel like there's no whatever sort of logic that may come from the team and the league office about, oh, we're spending more on players, we're spending on this and that. No. Like, you can't jack up the best basketball product in Barclays Center for the next like decade. Like, I feel like doing that, nah. Like, if you want to increase like a small percentage, I mean, that's part of the game, I understand. But to just like jump it up by like 200% for some people, I'm like, nah, don't do that. Mm-mm. Like, you owe people better than that, and you have enough like money from the people running the organization to not feel the need to sort of like raise the prices on people, and the ticket services as well too. Like, they got enough. Like, you don't need to price out the fans, and with that, you're pricing like you it's almost like Erica. It's almost like an MSG when the Knicks are good. It's like, oh, it's so loud, but it's like all the rich people are there, and it's like it's not like real people. You want to have an environment where it's like actual like people who don't wear like I don't know. It's like you're not like a CEO. Like you can just be like a regular person who can get a ticket to the game, pull up with your family, have a great time, and not feel like you have to devote an entire paycheck for tickets. So I think that that's a pass for me, and I want them to do a little bit better.
Yeah, Jen writing, it was a shock for sure. Bums me out that the 28-year fans and families are going to be priced out. This league was built on community. I agree. And Roberta, I don't know. I know we shared it in Slack, but we're seeing an upwards of 80% increase that's due in
Mhm.
less than a month. Like, baby, I
Yeah.
mean, where's the payment plan at? Because like, how you going to jack up some
Yeah.
prices and then that turnaround is crazy. Like you ain't even give people the off season to come with it. That's crazy to me. Like I don't know, but
Yeah.
are you officially passing or playing on that?
I recently finished an MBA in sports and entertainment management. So I have lots of thoughts about it. I'm gonna try to keep it short. When you're trying to, establish your product as a sports team, especially as a women's basketball team, you cannot lose your grassroots fans, people who have been supporting you, because that's going to put a stain on your image. Like, do you want new fans to come in and be like, do you want people to be like, oh, am I gonna be the next one to be like screwed over price ticket prices? um so there's that. I think that they should come up with a plan, a loyalty plan, some sort of discount, or like, if you can, just give them the down payment. All right, so you've been with the team for this long. How for if you've been with the team, if you've been a season ticket holder for that long, we're going to give you, like, you need a lower, we're going to allow you to give a lower payment plan. And you have New York, a city where you have billionaires, and a city where you have people who struggle. It's not a cheap city. People are going to have to choose between New York Liberty games on summer or New York Mets, New York Yankees game. If you increase your prices, it's less likely that people are going to go to your game. On the other hand, to to maintain a team, to pay front office, to increase, to like value your product, you need to ticket prices play a big role on it. So if you have $10 tickets, sponsors are gonna look at it and be like, is that the kind of product that I want to be involved with? There are lots of factors that go in the decision making. Arena is also a factor. So when the Storm went back to Climate Pledge Arena, prices kind of like went higher a little bit. And I've personally, I have a good relationship with the head of ticket operations at the Storm, and I know that they really value long-standing fans, and I know
Mhm.
that the reason why people continue renewing their season ticket is because they know that they're going to be taken care of. Again, the Storm and the ticket people who have been in the Storm for a long time, they have a rapport with the fans. The New York Liberty has just changed ownership. What is their rapport with the fans? Do they feel close? Because that also plays a big factor when it comes to fans, buying into a team. And I saw that price, $8,000 a season. You're making a big investment
Almost
on that team.
90K, yeah.
Yeah, like, 9K in New York is what, 2 month rent. It's a lot of money. So I think that they need to have a strategy that's going to value both the product, and that's going to raise the price of their product, and that's going to value long-term season ticket holders. So I think that one doesn't
Yeah.
go without the other.
I think though I'm absolutely passing on this, but to your point, Roberta, and I think we can all understand this. Like the yesterday's price is not today's price for the WNBA. Period. Point blank. And while we understand that, like, don't be out here playing people to their face. So Jen saying that there is going to be a 10% break from what they'll charge a new subscriber, but dang, like that price went sky high. And then
just to be clear, it's a pass for me.
Yeah. It's just kind of wild, and you can, by arbitrarily raising the price too early, like you can also harm the product and the brand. So that's something to keep in consideration. We did have 2 left, but we talked about Caitlin Clark at the top of the show, so we'll end on this one. Am I being a little petty by adding this? Probably, but you know what? It's my podcast. I'll do what I want. Las Vegas Aces will contend for a title. This one might be a little tough. I'm curious what y'all think. Pass or play? Anyone can start. I'll take y'all out the hot seat, since this is not team specific to a Black Rosie Media podcast. I'll start. I am going to, at this particular moment, with the caveat that I might change my opinion later, I'm going to pass. Then I do not think that the Las Vegas Aces make it to the WNBA final. Now, I had them in my preseason prediction taking on the Connecticut Sun, as a matter of fact. But if I had the chance, which I just gave myself, to amend that prediction, I think I'm going to pass. I think that we see someone else other than the Aces in the WNBA finals. Why don't we go to Roberta first, and then Brian will close out with you before getting to some other questions.
Considering it's not an easy, I would say that they are contenders. I would say, for me, they have a pretty solid chance at making the finals. That might not be. I think that I'm not taking into consideration the moment. I'm taking into consideration like the history and Chelsea Gray playoffs mode. As someone who was in Seattle when Chelsea Gray destroyed the Storm in those semifinals.
That's instant classic. That series is an instant classic. It deserves so much respect. But okay,
yeah, so you're
gonna play. All right, Brian. What do you think?
I'm passing. Like, like you can't. I feel like watching them for the past month, they can't get no rebounds. They can't get stops. Like, their defense is like falling apart. They're experimenting with starting with the starting 5 now, when this is the point where you need to be sort of like ironing things up for your bench rotation for the playoffs. And after the game on Wednesday, in the TV post game, Natasha Howard was like, "Hey, we know we're a good rebounding team. They're not a good rebounding team." So it's like, okay, we can boss you around. Like, just last week, Fee out rebounded the entire team by herself. And Becky changed the starting 5 because the game before, Fee cooked Kia Stokes over and over and over. So, AC, go guard Fee tonight. Oh no, I'm just gonna get you 30 and 18 tonight, while you guys get 17 rebounds as a whole team. So I feel like if there were 12 Asia Wilsons on the team, I would say differently, but it's just one, and amazing one. But everybody else on that team, they not it right now. KP's been super like, Jackie's been bad after the break. Like, Chelsea, I'm gonna cut all the slack in the world for, because she's coming back off a severe injury, and she, like the mind is there, but the body hasn't caught up with it yet. Meg, she was supposed to like beat a 3-point spacer for the team. It hasn't really hit like that yet. We saw it in the game against Chicago, but that's like one. Otherwise, Becky hasn't even played her that much. Kia has been on the boards, like, and after that, they don't play anybody else. Like, you're only playing 7. You've been playing 7 people for like 3 months, and what do you like? How, like, I remember last year, Becky made the joke that, if I played Asia more, she would have won the MVP. Well, she's going to get the MVP, and she's having to score 35 like 35 to
Oh
beat,
my god. Yep.
and they had to crawl from behind in that game, and then 42 against Dallas, and you guys let a fourth quarter lead go, and you lost. And even the game before against Chicago, I think they were up by 10 in the fourth quarter, and then it took Asia at the buzzer to save them. Like, it's very hard for them right now.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many issues for them, and if everything holds right now, they're starting on the road, and they've had the best. I want to say they've had the best record in the league the past 3 years. 21, they lost to Phoenix in the semis, and then 22 and 23, they had home court throughout the entire playoffs. This year, at best, they might get home court in one round, and worst case scenario, they might be the 5 seed going to either Seattle, Connecticut, or Minnesota to start. And those are going to be incredibly hard matchups. And for a team that's still trying to sort of figure it out on defense, and you got a team like Minnesota in particular who punishes every single mistake, like the Liberty could tell you themselves that, hey, make a mistake, they're going to get us. And a defense that's not doing well right now against an offense like that, big trouble.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Jen saying Vegas will turn it on. Don't have it right now, but wouldn't count them out. I mean, like I said, if since it's my podcast, I asked the question today. Today is a pass. It's a no for me, dog. It's a no for me, dog. I will openly admit on this here podcast, we could do a week to week and have this in pass and play every week if we want to. We're not going to do that because this is not about the Las Vegas Aces. But my point, I might switch it up. Okay. Listener questions. If you have any burning questions, now's the time. Put them in the chat. I starred a few and I already asked. I have some prompts for you too. But first, let's go back to some of the comments that I starred. Hey Erica, hey fam, hey, what's up? Do you think the Libs hold on to that one spot? Okay, this is a great question because I've been thinking about it a lot, and just by virtue of me knowing myself, and that I've been thinking about it, that means that I'm starting to question whether they will hold on to it. We talked about this with Misha on the last episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, and I said, if they can keep the losses for the rest of the way under 5 or at 5, then yeah, they had a good chance. That being said, I did not expect them to lose to LA. That was not one of the losses that I credited to the that I gave them leeway for. And I do think that Damien had said it in the chat earlier, and Damien also asked the question. But Damien saying that, the New York Liberty were the first, or he alluded to I should say, the standings and the lead in the standings not really being that much. What is it right now? 2.5 games. They're up 2.5 games on Minnesota, up 3 games on Connecticut, and up 6 on Seattle, up 7 on Las Vegas. 2.5 games. There's still a decent amount of games left. I think it's absolutely doable. And we need to see, I think I want to reserve my definitive answer until they get through that break, Brian. Because right now, my answer might be different. They're just not looking like the New York Liberty team that's been able to secure the playoff spot, the first team to secure the playoff spot. Am I concerned? Yes. But I'm not panicking, I guess is what I would say. But Brian, what do you think? Do you think they hold on to the number 1 spot?
I think they do, and I think that we'll get a better feel on if they can lock everything up by September 10 when they travel to Dallas for 2, because
yes,
3 games, a home and home with Seattle, and then a Sunday game against Las Vegas. If they're able to sort of like play well in that stretch, I feel like they do more than enough to wrap things up, because after that, Dallas for 2, Minnesota in Brooklyn for a Sunday afternoon game, and then they close with Washington and Atlanta. That's a very doable stretch right there. And I think that if they're able to get the wins that they're supposed to, maybe like grab enough not an upset because they're the one team in the league. Like there's no upsets for them. But if they're able to beat Minnesota in particular, because that gives them the season series
That's
over the wing,
critical.
because
Yeah.
they have the season series over Connecticut, they have it over Las Vegas. If they can grab it over Minnesota, that pretty much locks the number one seed down for them 100%. And then it's just a matter of making sure everybody's fully ready to go for playoff weekend in Barclays Center.
I like it. This, I love, Jen, that you put this in here because I forgot to put this in the shoot around. What do you think about the new Sky mascot? First of all, who was it? It was one of the newsletters that I get, which is how I found out that the Sky had a new mascot. But you know, they've been boycotting Sky Guy at least all season long, and a little bit last season too. You know, I feel like I need to know more about this mascot, but when you have Ellie, I mean,
it's hard to beat, and I love that there's already like mascot pettiness going on. I'm here for it. I'm all here for it.
And so, Roberta, let's stick with you then, and then we'll get Brian's thoughts because I could tell, Brian, you got some thoughts on this one. But specifically, Ellie say, I am an only child in response to folks saying Ellie had a sister. Listen, as the oldest, I love that, Ellie. Whether it's true or not, you just stick with your story, sis.
Yeah, no, and Ellie is completely right. You know, she was here first. And that's just full Ellie personality coming
Truly.
out. You know, you don't want to go. You don't want Ellie going Pacific Northwest on us. You want Ellie to continue being
fair.
Ellie, and I love that.
You know what? Actually, I changed my mind. See, Ellie is such a personality that I made a grave injustice. If you listen or watch the Gotta Get Up intro, then you know that Maddie is in that intro. So Ellie, baby, don't forget from whence you came. Like, she's fire. let's not act like it. But Maddie is the one who taught a lot of New York Liberty fans to spell liberty. Okay, let's not be disrespectful. I don't think that was pointed at Maddie. I think that was talk about new wave mascots. But I'm just saying, here on Gotta Get Up, we're not gonna forget. Brian, what are your thoughts?
I feel like this happening the same weekend that Ellie wanted to go pay Dejanay Carrington a visit for trying to bully Jalen Sherrod is like, okay, you guys.
Oh my god,
you guys are messing with the wrong elephant this time. Like, I need y'all to be cool. But I would say, I think Roberta, I've told Erica this before. I am the resident mascot lover on the podcast. Like, you get a mascot, I'm like, yeah, I like it. More mascots. I enjoy them a great deal. But I will say, for the new Sky mascot, like, was a Sky Guy at Ellie's birthday? I feel like Ellie.
Yes, I was surprised. Sky Guy did show up though.
Ellie might have a little bit of solidarity with Sky Guy, so you know.
Wow. Sky Guy did roll through. Was Doppler there too? I gotta.
I don't think Doppler was there.
Okay.
Doppler was there.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
I'm not a big mascot person. I'm a big Ellie person, but I'm not a big mascot person.
I mess with Ellie. I will always remember Maddie and Mr. and Mrs. Met, but specifically Mrs. Met I mess with. All y'all others, I just keep my mouth closed because I'm not a mascot person. I like very specific New York mascots, and the rest of them like a mascot. But I've said this before. I think I was talking actually on a hockey podcast. Mascots are not made for my demographics, so
I like the Sounders mascot.
The Sounders mascot? I don't know. Oh, that's cool. Also, I had a very bad mascot experience in Connecticut. I'm not really ready to share it on this podcast. I have shared it publicly before. It's actually not very funny at all. It's very inappropriate. But yeah, it was weird. So the person, because it was a person, it wasn't a mascot, because you know mascots embody a character. The person that was playing that mascot, extremely inappropriate. That's all I will say about that at the moment.
God.
Yeah, it was like, ooh, gross. Anyway, we will move on. So, but even before then, I have not been a big mascot person. Not really my vibe. Okay, we did have a late entry. from the household of Rodriguez. So how and this is another thing that we talked about at Hobet that I know before, but I thought it was interesting. Brian, I'm going to come to you first for this one. How do the coaching styles between Noe and Sandy compare and contrast?
That's a fascinating question. I think on the comparison piece, they're both they're both coaches who will stand up for their players in public. Like you'll never have a situation where they'll throw someone under the bus. I think Roberto, I feel like you could probably expand on this a little bit more. But early in the season, when Skylar was struggling, there was a lot of like early discussion about, oh, Skylar's not doing this, Skylar's not doing that, and Noe Quinn. It might have been after the game in New York, in fact, where Noe was like, "Hey, you need to give her time.
Mhm.
Like she's working hard. She's doing what she needs to do. Like y'all need to like she's been gone for a year and a half. Like give her that respect and that understanding. And I feel like having a coach who will go to bat for you in public like that is such a valuable thing. Like you never want to have a moment when you feel like the boss is questioning you. Like when the person leading the organization puts their full faith and trust in you, not just privately, but publicly as well. And in the way that Noelle did, I think is really incredible. And Sandy has done the same over the years. Like one of the most famous examples is when the Mercury players didn't want to do post game after the finals. It was Sandy
Mm,
taking hits for everybody.
yep.
She stayed
Yep.
up there, like really made sure to shield her players from all the heat that came their way. And knowing Sandy, she'd do it again. Like if like she's someone that will stand up for players in public, really be able to give them that confidence. And I think even when players are struggling and having questions about their role, like she's an open book when it comes to that regard. Like famously last year, Bernard Hamilton was like, "Yo, what is my role here? Like I'm just like standing in a corner. This is not what I do." And then they had that conversation, and then you saw Sandy accommodate and make room for Beat and really allow her to make that big push down the stretch. So I think that even this year, Kennedy Burke mentioned, "Hey, this is a transition for me. I but here I'm just I do." And then Sandy really gave her that encouragement. So I think the similarity is that they're really coaches who, and I think what helps is coaches who played in the league. Like
Mhm.
that's a built-in respect that comes with the job when you've been in the grind with the players and going through what they've gone through. I think that helps a lot. As far as coaching style differences, I feel like this might just be me thinking more about like roster construction in this context, but in the sense of like the Liberty don't do ISOs like they're not an ISO team. Like that's not what they do when they're playing well. Like when they're ISOing all the time, they're in trouble because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Whereas with Seattle, I think they have the ability to do that a lot more. I think a lot of that stems from Jewel and also NECA being able to do that. Whereas the Liberty, like they look their best when the ball is moving side to side, third, fourth action, things like that, where they're really able to pressure the defense and bend them in that way. So I think that will be a difference as far as like coaching style. But I feel like that might just be me putting a little bit more emphasis on the rosters per se.
Yeah, I'll chime in here quickly before we get Roberta to respond specifically, to standing up for players, because I'd love for you to chime in there. But I think for me and Roberta, I know we talked about this. Noe is quite honestly the biggest difference, and the contrast is that Noelle Quinn is not a tried and a winning head coach.
Mhm.
We talked about that. Now, Noelle Quinn knows how to win. She's been a part of a winning culture at Seattle, but not as the head coach. Sandy
Mhm.
Brondello has been a winning head coach, not with her current team, the New York Liberty. So I guess maybe there's a little bit of similarity there, that they're playing a different role. Each has winning pedigree, but not with the team or in the role that they're holding right now. So that's also a similarity. I think for me, if I had to put a fine point on it with where Noelle Quinn is right now, I give Sandy the edge on being able to make sharp decisions at the end of games. I think Noelle Quinn is still figuring out what buttons she wants to press. And for me, it's hard, as Brian was saying, to kind of remove that from the roster that you have. But for me, I think if I did pull back and if I really had time to sit down and chat with these questions, I would, or chat with these coaches about these questions, I would lean into Sandy being a little more confident with what she's going to do, regardless of her team. Whereas Noelle Quinn is still figuring that out. And I think you can even point to the Olympics. Sandy was kind of joking around, Brian, right? That she would call plays in the Olympics, and then Stewie in particular, I believe she mentioned, would be like, "Oh, that's a New York Liberty play," because she has her book. There's the book of Brondello. Yeah. I think Noelle Quinn is still trying to figure that out, and she doesn't have the same autonomy at the international level with Canada that Sandy has with the Opals. So and honestly, that just comes with years in the game, right? So all things being equal, well, they're not, but I think Sandy Brondello, which is understandably so, is a little more assured. And she will also, I think this is probably a similarity, but I think Sandy is 100% comfortable and confident in taking the heat when her decision making doesn't work out. I think she's also clear on when decision making or the process isn't working out, and those two things are different. People outside of organizations sometimes conflate those things, but I think Sandy does a really great job of telling us when her decision making didn't pan out and when she feels like things didn't pan out because her team is in the middle of a process, and that she still is trusting the process, and that her team is being guided to trust the process. I think we're still trying to figure out what the difference is between what Noelle Quinn's systems are and what she takes responsibility for as a head coach, and where we are in the process. I don't think we're far off, but to me, that's a more clinical or technical, I guess, coaching thing as opposed to kind of a bigger basketball thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, my thoughts are very similar. I think that they differ in the way that Noe has more of a play safe mentality, and I think that Sandy is more daring, probably because of their experience and because they each have because Sandy has her own playbook. She knows what works, she knows what doesn't work, so that might be where they differ most. And I think that where they're similar is just really respecting and giving room for the players to you know make their own decisions when they have to. I think they are really good at making their players comfortable.
Yes, exactly. And we'll lean into that fully. It's like, I don't care if you think it looks ugly. I don't really care if it does look ugly right now, because this is what the process has to be. And we heard that especially from Sandy with the Opals, who did not look great. And Sandy minced no words. She's like, yeah, we didn't look great. That's not how we play. But she wasn't about to Brian's point, get on her players. She said, the coaches, we have to be better. Like, we have to be sharper, and that's effectively what they did. Kind of speaking of the Olympics, though, I wanted to circle back to the questions that I had posed to y'all. So we'll start with Sami Whitcomb. What is Sami Whitcomb's role right now, Hobart, for the Seattle Storm, and how, if at all, do you think it could impact tomorrow's game?
She is the team's energizer. When the team is down, when the team is going through those downs during the game, Sami comes in and she hits key 3-pointers that kind of give the Storm that energy that they need in order to get back in the game. So she really is a north for that team. She was known as the the Duracell bunny, the energy, but the energizer bunny for the team, because she does have that with her. She brings a lot of authority on the court and players really respect her. I feel like coming back from the Olympics, she brought the energy that she had in the Opals to the Storm. I feel like she steps on the court and she takes responsibility. She becomes that team leader when she's on the court. She becomes like the PG. When Skylar Diggins Smith goes to the bench and Sami comes in, the Storm doesn't struggle because they both match each other's level. So I think she brings stability and energy for the Storm.
I love it. I wanted to go back to this comment. I know I posted it, but yes, when the Liberty clinched, this was in the game, or not the game notes, but the press release, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, that every time Sandy Brondello has served as a head coach in the WNBA, she has gotten her team to the playoffs. That is a wild breath of work. So for anyone who disrespects Sandy Brondello or questions her, now y'all see why I hold her down, because that's wild. I also wanted to get to this. Now, I know, Damien, you also asked me about what I thought the New York Liberty record was going to be. I don't think I ever said the final record. I did say, and I think I repeated today, I was saying that they won't lose more than, this was when we had the show with Misha. So right before we came back, I was like, I don't think they lose another 5 games, no more than 5 games for the rest of the season. I think I said that 5 to 7 range. But if I'm not mistaken, Brian, I don't think they can get mathematically to 35 wins.
Yeah, I think I saw today that the most they can top out at is 34 because of 6 losses in the 40 games.
Yeah.
So 35 they're not gonna hit. I think that if they're like, as long as they get the 1 seed, that's all that matters. Like if
I would agree.
Like, I'll say 32. I feel like they might trick off a game here or there, like not knowing them and knowing that people are people sometimes, and sometimes you have like a rough day. I feel like they might get got like a game or two coming down the stretch to finish at like a 32-8.
Yeah, it's 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So yeah, I think we're pretty much saying the same thing. Because if they lose another 6 games, I think that puts them at 30. I don't know. I gotta re-engineer the math. I don't think in numbers because it hurts my brain.
Same here.
I don't think in numbers because it hurts my brain. Okay, Brian, I wanted to come back to you because there was a comment. I'm gonna look for it. Let me ask you. I'm gonna frame the question how I'm thinking of it, and then I'll post the comment later so I don't have to, because I can't always find what I need. But I had asked you to think about Steph Dolson versus Niara Sabally. And I'd love for you to weigh in there. What do you see as the similarities? Do you even have a handle right now if the Liberty are better or worse with one versus the other?
I think with Niara, we've really gotten to see it more in the past couple games. Like her mobility really opens up a lot of things for them. Like she's a great roller on the pick and roll when she dives to the basket. Like in the Dallas game in particular, she was doing great work on the glass. Like we're starting to see her do a little bit more as far as like handoffs in the mid post and the top of the key, really being able to tap into that. So I think that her game, and she has like really good touch at the rim, and she has a great motor coming up and down the court, which I think is a nice change up from what Steph was last year. Like Steph could really spot up from 3, and she's a great passer, especially in like the top of the key. She's really smart and knows the offense really well and can adjust and do things on a particular level. So I think as far as like passing and maybe 3-point shooting, Steph has the advantage. But for what this roster needs, I think Niara is a better fit. Because especially, if you put her on an island against like a Kelsey Mitchell, for example, she could move her feet, keep up step for step, and then use her length to really make things hard for a player at the rim. So I like that Niara's mobility, and I think increased confidence plays a role too. Like she was like Erica, you were there. She was amazing.
Good.
She was great, and I feel like she's carried that over after the break. Like we see her really like beast on the glass. Like she was really going in there against like a big Dallas team with Satu, Natasha Howard, and Tierra McCowan. Like she was really able to hold her own down there. And I think that was incredibly impressive. And I think even last night in the Sparks game, Sandy started her after halftime. And I was like, okay, I see you're doing a great job. I trust that you won't get in foul trouble. How about you start with the other guys, and then like that right there, I think is the biggest telling confidence because okay, I trust you to play with all my top pieces and my top players, and I trust that you're going to do what you do well. And there was a stretch where she had like I want to say like 6 or 7 points in the third quarter as they fought to get back in. I'm like, okay, Niara, like moving well, rolling hard to the basket, good touch at the rim, being able to catch difficult passes, very very impressive. And I think that is really, I think it's a testament to what she's been doing for the past year.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I was quite honestly blown away with what she was able to do at the Olympics because we haven't seen her healthy in the States, quite honestly, whether it's people tapping in at Oregon, tapping into the New York Liberty. We know that she has put up numbers internationally in other leagues and obviously with Germany. So to see it, I was like, oh, heck yes. Now, to comp her to Steph, she doesn't give you the size or even the strength that Steph Dolson does, but I think she makes up for it, as you mentioned, in her mobility. I think Steph Dolson, if I could take any one thing from Steph and give it to Niara, or literally anybody, Steph Dolson, she gets booked for it a few times, but sister sets a mean screen. Like she sets a mean, she could knock AT out with a screen, and you know that's saying a lot. Um so yeah, I'd take that. But other than that, if I had to go like for like, I think there was a time, and you already hit on this, so I don't need to really elaborate too much. I think there was a time in the New York Liberty where Steph Dolson made a lot of sense, and I think that time has passed. And Niara is a really solid choice for what this New York Liberty team is now and is hoping to become and growing into. And the fact that she can grow alongside Sabrina, who she's familiar with, Leo, hopefully, who she's familiar with, learning alongside Stewie and Jonquel Jones. I mean, I think she can be, oh, how do I want to say this? I think her game more mirrors Stewie than Jonquel Jones. And I think if you have Niara continue to learn under a Stewie, she can be um a version of Brianna Stewart, like a little like sub portion, like Stewie is Stewie. Let's not get it twisted. That being said, what do we say, Huerta, about Stewie's game that makes her so fantastic, especially in the international play, is that she is a post player, right? That is effectively a Swiss Army knife, and she can pull post players out because of what she does. She's like sneaky solid and sound defensively. Niara will block your shot before you even realize that it didn't go into the rim. You know what I'm saying? Like she's just smooth, and I feel like she's the closest to what I've seen of like a little bit of how Stewie plays on that whole rounded approach at that position, at the post position.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with her international experience. I was actually thinking about that before.
Linebacker. I'm sorry. That obviously that was for Steph Dolson.
Yeah,
but that's hilarious.
yeah. I was actually thinking about that right before we started here. How like I think because today I think I would say that Stewart is my favorite player, and I think it is because she when I started watching and following women's basketball, it was because of FIBA basketball. That's kind of like what caught my eyes, and I think that Stewie embodies that. She is the ultimate FIBA slash WNBA transformer, and I think that makes her very special.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, folks. Well, that's what we got. Thank you so much for your comments and questions. And tomorrow is a big one. It's part of the Ion sequence of games. Ion has been appointment viewing on Fridays for the WNBA, and the well, I guess they stack two of them because the Aces are hosting. But one of the last two games on Ion is going to be the New York Liberty at Seattle Storm, playing at Climate Pledge Arena. The odds via FanDuel The odds via FanDuel, I've never seen odds like this. I just took a look because now they have the odds in the schedule. Like just to give you an example, on Friday, the Fever play the Chicago Sky. The odds are minus 5.5 for Indiana, plus 5.5 for Chicago. Then you have Minnesota Lynx and the Dallas Wings, and I like these odds because Dallas, like 8-22, not great, but the way they've been playing, they're playing with some spark right now. Minus 7.5 in favor of Minnesota, plus 7.5. It's 10.5 plus minus in favor of Atlanta. Wait, hold on. Did really? Is that how the odds work? Because sometimes I mix these up. No.
I
Okay,
know nothing about
no.
that.
It's okay. No. It's plus. I was like, wait, really? Minus 10.5. They just have it listed. The home team is last. That's why I got confused. Minus 10.5 in favor of the Aces. 10.5 for the Atlanta Dream. The odds for Seattle Storm, New York Liberty are 2. That's how close that that's wild to me. I don't think I've ever seen odds like that before. Plus minus 2, and they are in favor of the New York Liberty. Minus 2 in favor of the New York Liberty. I feel like when you see low odds or like a game that the odds makers think is going to be close, 5 is like close. That's a close game. They have the odds at 2. That's wild to me. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I feel like what helps Seattle is that their home court advantage is so like distinct. Like watching that crowd, because like I think they've sold out every game like in that building's existence, if I'm not mistaken. So they've created such.
It's a nice. I've never watched a W game there, but I've seen hockey there, and it gets really fun in CPA. But anyway,
it looks like such a gorgeous arena too. I'm like, man, they did
it's beautiful.
Yeah, they did a great job putting that together.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. This is an interesting one, Damien. We're not going to have time to get into it, but let's do pass or play real quick. We'll wrap up the show. And just for fun, Hobart, that we'll start with you. Then we'll go to Brian, and then I'll close us out. Pass or play, Kayla Thornton should be in position for 6th Woman of the Year.
It's a pass for me. I don't think so.
Brian?
I'm going to play. I like what KT's been cooking this year. It's a play for me.
Ooh, for me, if I think about what Kayla Thornton has done at key moments for the New York Liberty, it's a play. I need to do a little bit more of my list on who I think other people could be for 6th Woman of the Year, because honestly, another person who popped into my head for 6th Woman who also plays for the New York Liberty, Leo.
Good shout. I like it.
Yeah, so I want to think on that, but I appreciate you dropping that in the comments, Damien. Let's keep that. We did it pass or play to end this episode, but let's keep that for a topic for our next episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Brian, you usually join me on that show. Sometimes Misha comes through when she got something to say about the Washington Mystics. And of course, we have Roberta, who has been joining us when we have not just our squad cast, as I like to say, or crossovers, but also for some international duty, and will stick around for our Seattle Storm podcast. But on behalf of Roberta, who is the birthday woman tomorrow, so what is it again? Feliz aniversario, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Feliz aniversario. And Brian Florenton holding it down in Brooklyn, as we get ready for a new school year on the other side of Labor Day. My name, once again, Erica L. Ayala. We appreciate you so much for joining us on Black Rosie Media. It is almost a pick'em. It's wild. But we appreciate y'all. Stay tuned for the game. And if you're not already a member of our Slack community, go ahead and do that. We'll have that Slack link on our social media accounts, and of course, when we post this on YouTube. But go ahead and do that, because you best believe we're going to be tuned in to this game, locked in, and definitely commenting what we think. So you'll get all of our thoughts before the next podcast. But all right, now it's time to awkwardly wave goodbye so we can get out of here. Later days, everybody. Have a good night. Yes, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.